Action.
Morning, everybody. You know, I've said a couple times so far that the foundation, you want to build, a whole building, foundation is the most critical part. I said over about this gentleman, architect, who said that, number one, the most important part of, like he said, the Freedom Tower was the foundation, building that foundation. Digging, setting it, building it, and then building up. It took like more than a year just to get the foundation built. And then you can start building right up real quickly, but if you don't have a proper foundation, I don't care what you have on top, it's not going to last. So if you don't have a foundation of what's by Yidden, by a person, what's the most important foundation?
Judaism.
Mentch, Derech Eretz. Mentch. You want to hear the proof? I know you asked a great question. You said, not believing in Hashem. Avram was looking for a son, for a wife for his son Yitzchak. And what did he say? I'd rather go to people. I'm not worried about the fact they believe in Hashem, don't believe in Hashem. The most important thing, the critical thing, is menschlichkeit. Can't have somebody who's not a mensch. No, you started. Okay, but that's not, yeah, it's true, good point. Yeah. You have to have menschlichkeit. That is like key. And you should know something, working on being a mensch, having respect, Derech Eretz for people, Derech Eretz for kavod abrius, for yourself. It's not easy to do because it's not like you do it once and it's over. It's a constant battle. It's a constant avodah. It's constant. 24, 7 days a week. You don't get any breaks. You don't say, okay, I'm on vacation. Let me be not a mensch. Let me be disrespectful. I'm not around the community or whatever it is, and no one's going to know me, so I can do whatever I want. It's not true. Wherever you go, whenever you go, you're on the clock. And you got to be a mensch. It's not just because people are watching you, it's because you're building your foundation. So you don't act like a mensch, you make a crack in your foundation. Derech Eretz Kadmol Torah, you just made a crack in your own foundation. A guy's going to build this whole big building, and then he goes to the foundation, he cracks it, smashes it, build, crack. What's wrong with that guy? You're building your own building, like why would you crack it? So person's working on themselves. They're going to be a big Talmud Chacham. They're going to be, whatever you want to call it, whatever their goals are. And they're not a mensch. They've just created cracks in that foundation. And like I said, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no breaks. Now, you do it, you get no thanks for it, right? Parents don't always see you. They don't get the nachas. You with some person you never met before. No one's going to know this person. Like my parents aren't going to find out that I dealt with this person out in Yopinsville. How are they going to know? I'm not going to go tell them. I was mean to somebody. That's what you're going to do? You're going to go tell them that you were mean? Oh, that's so bizarre. You're not going to go tell them. You want to maybe tell them that you were great? Fine. But you're not going to tell them when you're not great. So who's going to tell anybody? How's anyone going to know about you? No one knows me. I can be in this place, and oh really? I'm going to be disrespectful to that person. No one's going to know. You're right. Once you get used to cutting through stoplights, at one point you're going to get caught. That's true. But besides that, most people don't think about, there's cameras everywhere in life too. God has his cameras. That's right. But if a guy's not thinking about that, and he's just thinking about, how is anyone going to know if I was nice or not? No one's going to know. Putting on some cap, and knows who I am, and I can be disrespectful. I can be a person who's not a mentch, do what I want. No one's going to know who I am. It's not illegal. I'm not getting a ticket for it. I'm not getting pulled over by the police. No one's going to know. So I'm going to tell you a story I heard last night. A mother called me up about her son. Might come, might not come. We'll see. Are you here already? I'm saying that somebody might come or might not. Okay. So she tells me, we were talking about what is the most important part that a person can learn in yeshiva. What's the most important thing to learn at home? What's the most important things to learn in yeshiva? That's what we're talking about. That's what we're discussing. And she says, the most important thing to her is Derech Eretz. Be a mentch. Treat people respectfully. Treat yourself with respect, and don't make yourself into a shmata, into a nothing. Have a little bit of respect for yourself. Of course, respect others. She goes, that is like the foundation. So, wow, that's one thing where you're it's very important to us here. So she says that it's happened a couple years ago. She says this is like what she really drives home to her children. And she goes, and you never know what they're like when they're out of sight from you. She goes, you don't know. She goes, I hear they go to people's homes and they're nice. She goes, but like, that's still in the community. How are you going to find out what they're like somewhere in the middle of nowhere? They went away. You wouldn't know. How are you going to find out? I know, besides the cameras, whatever. Not going to know. So she tells me that she had to go to a government office. This goes back a couple years. She had to go to this government office, and she had to wait online, and the line was crazy. And not only was the line crazy, the people, it was hot, and the people are uncomfortable sitting in the waiting room, and they're getting frustrated, and they're being mean, disrespectful to the employees that are doing your paperwork, and people are complaining, why am I waiting here? Why can't you do this smart? And she goes, and she's telling herself, it's hot, it's uncomfortable. However, I always tell my children, the most important thing is Derech Eretz, having respect. They are doing a job, it's hot for them too. I have to have respect. You're right, I'm getting very frustrated here, but I have to go out of my way to just control myself. So she waited for a couple of hours till you finally go from one line to the next line, and then they tell you to go to that office. Finally, at the end of a couple hours, she finally meets with a person. And she's talking to the person, and the person says to her, they're going through, filling out the paperwork, and the person says, 1 second, what's your last name? So she says, tell us the last name. So the person goes, there was somebody here with that same name. She goes, impossible. Impossible. She goes, my family are the only people with that last name. She goes, lady, I'm telling you, there was somebody here with that exact last name. You must have a relative. She goes, I'm telling you a fact, there is nobody else besides my husband and our children and myself that have that last name. She She goes, there's nobody. The person says, you know what? No, I'm looking this up. She goes, I remember specifically there was somebody here 6 months ago and they had that name. She goes, 6 months ago? You know, you've been seeing probably today a good couple dozen people just so far. And the rest of the day you're going to see probably at least 150 people. So she goes, so you're going to tell me that in a week you've seen probably maybe 700 people. And she goes, and you're telling me that in 6 months, that's more than 20 weeks, let's say 24 weeks. She goes, you've seen how many tens of thousands of people? She goes, and you remember that somebody had my last name? I don't think so. So she goes, I do, and I'm going to find it. So she goes to her files, and she starts looking up on the computer, and she finds where the file is, and she goes, she gets the file, she comes back, she puts it on the table, she goes, aha, I told you there was somebody here with the same last name as you. So she looks at the file, she goes, oh my gosh, that's my son. She goes, my son didn't tell me he came to this office. She goes, I didn't know anything about this. She goes, yeah, your son came to this office and I met with your son. She goes, wow, what are the odds that out of all the offices, and there's lots of people that we could have ended up in, I end up in the same office with meeting you, who remembers my son from 6 months ago, which he never told me he came here, that you remember my son. She goes, that's like so crazy. Lady goes, but I told you there was somebody here with the same last name. She goes like, 1 second, do you remember everybody's names? She goes, no, I don't even remember the people that were here this morning. She goes, 1 second, so how would you remember my son's name? Of all the people. Like, you tell me you don't remember any name, and we have all right, not the most amazing name, it's nothing like super interesting. She goes, but like, how would you remember my son? She goes, oh, simple. She goes, I never had anybody in my office who was as respectful, who talked so nicely and was so appreciative and thankful for everything that I did for him. She goes, and I said to myself, I am not going to forget this person's last name. I am not going to forget this person. She goes, I've never met anybody so respectful before. So the mother, you hear this? The mother now heard how her son had respect. He could have been in the office and been a fetch like most of the people. But instead, he walked in, he talked respectfully, so respectfully that the woman said, I am going to never forget this name. I'm never going to forget this guy. And the mother comes, and she's there, and then she gets to have. She goes, do you know how I felt when I heard that? Like the nachas I had. Here I've been saying this, growing up, every kid being, trying to be a kid and trying to do whatever they do. And she goes, and it's challenging, and they have to say, no, you can't talk like that. No, you need to say please, you need to say thank you, you need to this, talk nicely, look at the person, have respect, don't interrupt, don't look away. Have respect for people. I know when it's difficult, when you're upset, when you got to talk with respect. She goes, and Hashem sent that I should be in the same office with the same person, that the person will tell me this, and I can have a good feeling. So you think to yourself, like, no one's going to know. You're right. No one's going to know. So you think. However, Hashem, who's got the cameras, also can make sure that everybody ends up in the right room with the right person to pass along this message, if you're a mentch or not. But that's not why you do it. You do it because this is your foundation that you're building for yourself. And believe me, her son did not know, in 6 months from now, my mother's going to find out how I was a mentch. Her son did it because, Lamaisa, mom taught him again and again, you have to be a mentch. You have to be respectful to people. Ad kedei kach, so far that the woman said, I will never forget this guy's name. And 6 months later, after probably more than, gosh, I can't even think of how many tens of thousands of people she had seen in 6 months. And still she said, I'm not going to forget this guy's name. This guy, I'm not going to forget. That's a mentch. And what do you think he did already? What do you think he did? He brought her flowers? He brought her a cake?
He spoke nicely.
He spoke nicely. Wasn't that difficult? He said, thank you. He said, I appreciate you helping me. Thank you so much. You have a hard job. I really appreciate it. And nobody else does that. That's all it takes. Saying hello to somebody. Saying good morning to somebody. Smiling at them. Saying Yashikayach. Someone gets an aliyah. Shkayach. Guy dams liyama. Shkayach. Guy duchens. Shkayach. They did you a favor. Thank you. They make you lunch. Thank you. They make you supper. Thank you. They clean up. Thank you. They do the laundry. Thank you. That's all you gotta do. Thank somebody. Like a mentch. Now, is that really menschlich? I'd like to give a shout out to Shmerel for doing the laundry. Told you applause thing. Next guy. I'd like to give a shout out to Shmerel for doing the laundry. Next guy. I'd like to give a shout out to Shmerel for doing the laundry. Next one. I'd like to give a shout out to Shmerel for doing the laundry. It's funny. It's funny.
But it's not.
That's called disrespectful. It's disrespectful on many levels. It's disrespectful because you're doing shout outs. And the whole purpose is to give menschliche kavod, a little bit of respect and thanks, appreciation. That's not appreciation. That's just making a joke out of the whole thing. That's appropriate? That's called building a foundation? You think that's funny? That's called respect? Giving respect to somebody? To make a joke out of the whole thing? By the way, anybody who hears about shout-outs says, wow, that's an amazing thing. I think we need to start that in our house. We need to start that in our yeshiva. We need to start that in our school. We need to start that in our office. Everybody goes around and gives thanks to each other. I'd like to give a shout out for whatever, making sure that we had good coffee this morning. I'd like to give a shout out to that for ordering the lunch. I'd like to give a shout out to this. Yeah. People are now copying and doing in their offices. That employees can, fellow co-workers can give thanks and karsa tov to each other. To make a joke out of it? What's wrong? That's like, take the foundation and let's smash it. Smash the foundation. It's funny. It's a joke. I don't think so. I think it's pathetic. There's a purpose why you do shout-outs. Be a mensch. Build yourself a foundation. Because I'm telling you, you think it's a joke. But the guy who thought, I'm not going to do a foundation, I'm going to do it my way. No one's going to catch me. They build a building, and the inspectors come, they take a look, and they go, I see a foundation. Yeah. And as soon as they move it out quick, get rid of the foundation, it's cost too much money, let's do it our way. And then later on, problems. By the way, there was a building in Lakewood, which a friend of mine told me he was at a Chanukah Sabayas. And everybody's dancing, the Chanukah Sabayas, and he said, and all of a sudden, the floor started becoming literally, he said, a trampoline. When everyone jumped, the floor lifted everybody into the air, like a trampoline.
How's that possible?
He said, everybody got so scared, they started just jumping out the windows. Because they thought the whole building was going to collapse on them, which it might very well have. And then, of course, the police came, they closed the whole thing down, and then the next day, the inspectors came, and they found that they cut corners, and they did not do it right. It was not built properly. It wasn't built according to the code, and they shut the whole building down. It was not used. And for the next, I don't know, probably close to 10 years, the building sat empty. Finally, somebody else bought it. It was sold a bunch of times. Got lower and lower and lower and lower because no one could do anything with the building. Finally, a guy came in. He paid. It was so little money that he could rip everything out and rebuild the whole thing from the inside. That's what they had to do. Put in all kinds of special reinforcements, and it cost a lot of money to redo it. But gentlemen, what's that from? You built this whole building, and it's done with no foundation. It's not built properly. You thought you get stick values. I don't need to be respectful. You just destroyed your own foundation. And you think it's funny later on in life when you have to deal with people and you end up doing the same thing you did years before. You lose your customers, you lose your family, you lose all your so-called friends, you lose everybody until you paint it yourself again into the corner. So Rabbi Isai, again, most important thing, build that foundation of mentch. You're building yourself. Build a building with a proper foundation of Derech Eretz, of mentch, thank yous, appreciation, respect for each other, respect for anybody you meet. Greet everybody, every person with respect. Treat everything with respect. Treat a sitter with respect. Treat your clothes with respect. Treat your chairs. Treat everything with respect, because if you want it to one day give you what you're going to want or need, it won't be able to give you that kayach because you disrespected it. And I told you, David HaMelech tore Shaul's cloak, tore his robe. And later on, David HaMelech, when he needed to be warm by clothes and by blankets, it couldn't keep him warm because he disrespected it, the beged, the concept of beged. So Rabbi Isai, you gotta have kavod, respect, appreciation, Derech Eretz. That is the foundation. Think positive. Let's have a